Hi, welcome back to Flint's Collectibles. Today we are going to do a full read-through and review on an Invincible Ultimate Collection Volume 4. But before we do, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to go down below and like, comment, and subscribe. So let's go ahead and dig in. Alright, so here is the front cover of Invincible Ultimate Collection Volume 4. So there's the front, and there's the spine. Just like all the other ones, just the color is orange instead. And then there's the back of the book with a cover price of $39.99. So let's go ahead and take off the dust jacket. Alright, so here it is without the dust jacket. It has the same look on the front and the back and the spine as the book with the dust jacket on it. It's all matching, so you don't have to keep the dust jacket on, so it's the exact same. So let's go ahead and dig in. Alright, so we open up and there's a nice orange tint opening page. Invincible Ultimate Collection Volume 4, created by Robert Kirkman and Corey Walker. Nice Invincible open page. So we open up to issue 36. And we're back to this guy that had like those robots. This is like the cover of that issue. Just regular life for Invincible. William's still upset because he hasn't found his friend. Well, they're trying to fight all these bad guys that are showing up. And here's Immortal and Duplicate, and they're all fighting this guy. And then this guy from Mars actually ends up catching the guy they're fighting. And they're like, oh, awesome. Thank you very much. And then Monster Girl and Robot are talking about how she keeps aging fast. So William has this idea that this university that they're at has been losing homeless people. So he dresses up as a homeless guy and he's like, hey, keep an eye out on me as Invincible. And when they take me, which they do. So then Mark follows his friend being taken. And he's having this fight with these robot guys, and they're just honestly kicking his butt. And then he realizes that there's his friend Rick right there. So he ends up trying to fight these guys, and then William's back with this guy who's all about turning people into like robots and zombies and making them a lot better as people. And Mark's not showing up, and he's kind of like, hey, I wonder if he's going to show up anytime now. So then issue 37 goes into Monster Girl and Robot going out to try to go to a movie, but Monster Girl's aged so young now that she can't even get into a movie. So Robot has an idea to get her in the movie, and she ends up getting in. And then we go back to William. He's been drugged now. This guy's gonna try to come better, and then bam, here comes Invincible to save the day. So they have this big old like fight going on, and then he's trying to get Rick to know who he is and like this robot, and he's starting to have like realizing who he is, and so he's kind of helping him out a little bit. And then Mark just hits this guy so hard that he cracks his jaw because he loses his cool, because he's just like, you need to stop what you're doing right now. And then Seal shows up, and they're taking that guy and William and Rick to try to help Rick get back to who he was. So Mark's having a hard time, and then he has to have a meeting with his school because he's not doing good. He's not showing up to class, and he's really having a hard time trying to juggle life with school. And right here is where Amber's hanging out like this friend of hers to help her with homework, and then she's having a hard time not being able to see him, and then him being gone and her not knowing what's going on. So they're talking about that and how this is how it's got to be. You know who I am now. Then Mark goes back to talk to Seal, and they're trying to get Rick back to who he was and take off all the robot parts and all the stuff that's been done to him and like reverse it. And then here's back where that guy that was drugged William, how his jaw's all broken, his mouth looks all messed up. So they're talking to him, and Cecile wants to offer him a job, actually, which is not probably what Mark would have done with him, considering all the pain that he caused. So now we go to issue 38, and it starts out with Alan. He's been captured by somebody, and they're trying to help him to get healed and recover. And then the guy that he was one of his good friends, he's actually a Vulturemite. So he's like, hey, I'll help you out with what your issue is you have going on with these Vulturemites, since I am one. And then we go back to the Pentagon. And then Rick's having a hard time trying to accept the idea that he's not knowing who he is and he's a robot. But this guy's like, hey, I've been shot so many times and hit, and I'm a robot as well, and it's okay. I look like a human, and I understand what your issues is. So then we go back to Amber, hang out with her friends, and they're talking about Mark and how then they've actually met him and how he's no good for you. You need to find someone else. And then Mark shows up randomly, and they're like, he's like, hey, here I am. So he's trying to do the right thing by being there. And then here is the Supreme Lizard, and they're having a talk about coming to Earth and trying to take over. And then we go back to Mark's little brother, who has been with this girl who's helping him since he's aging so fast and he's learning so quick. And then this is the astronaut that got taken over by the I think they're called squids or something like that. Sorry if I'm wrong. And he's on a ship with all these things that have taken him over, and they're coming towards Earth, but Mark doesn't know yet. And then here's Mark hanging out with Amber's friends, and they're like, oh, he's so great, we're so happy you came with us, that kind of thing, even though they were just trash talking him. So now we're back to the Guardians of the Globe, and they're all talking about how there's this threat and coming towards Earth, and it's a big one. And this guy's like, did you say Mars? Because they don't know that he's from Mars yet. I think he's an astronaut who just gained powers. And then Mark goes to talk to Amber because he's having a hard time with stuff, so he needs some relief. And then bam, Amber and Mark kiss, which is something I seen coming from a long time ago in this story. So then we go to issue 39, and this guy says, I'm from Mars, and they're like, what? And he's like, actually, I need to tell you some stuff. And they start telling the history about these skids, I don't know how you say that, and how they take over races, but they couldn't take over the Mars race, and how they made them work and lift heavy objects, and they pretty much just did experiments on them. And then that's when the astronauts showed up, and then they started going crazy because they're trying to find a host because they want to get out of being worked and not having any control of anything. And this guy's like, you're in trouble now. And then we're back to Mark and Amber's kiss, and he's kind of like, oh, hold on a second, I have a girlfriend, like, I can't be doing this. And he's like, we'll talk about this here later. Here, let me help you, and we'll go back to help them out. Now they're all back at there and heading on a rocket ship to go try to come in conflict with this ship that's got these squid things on it. And Mark called Amber and telling her that he's going to be gone for a while, and she's super upset and just throws her phone and gets all worked up. And then she puts it back together and calls her friend that she's been doing classes with to be like, hey, well, let's come hang out here. So while that's going on, Mark and Amber are trying to talk, but Mark's kind of like, I need to take care of this, and we'll talk about it later. So this guy's back, and he's taking over Earth. One of the nuclear missile silos, he's trying to take one over while they're going out here. They're distracted. So now they're coming in contact with this ship with all these creatures on it, and then boom, Thistle's trying to blow them up. So Adam Eve's on there, and she's like, hey, let me help you come together, everybody. So she holds a bubble out in outer space so they don't die. And they go to issue 40, and they're all in the bubble, and they're trying to figure out what to do to get on the ship so they don't get close enough to it, and they bust through, and she holds the hole, and she passes out because she's not used to using her power this much. And then all these creatures are all over the place. And while that's going on, this guy's still he's taking over the Issel area. So the Guardian of the Globe that are on Earth, duplicate, one of them is going over here to fight this guy, and I respectfully decline. And then they're back on the ship trying to fight off all these creatures and not be taken over, and Robot figures out that there's a frequency that keeps them off of them. While that's going on, Amber has gone out with this guy that's her friend, and they're going to see a movie, and he's like, gets called to work, and he's like, no, I'm out, you can call somebody else right now. And Amber's just kind of like blown away because she's never got that from Mark, because when you're invincible you have to always be there. And these guys are having a full out brawl with this dude, like all the duplicates, and this little guy, he throws them in his mouth and then he eats them. And this guy throws something at this lady and just blows her up. And this guy's totally mad. While that's going on, Adam and Eve's trying to hold these things off of them. Then he throws this thing in his mouth, he eats his hand, and it blows off his head. And this guy's got a gun to the back of his head now. Then Adam and Eve's still having a hard time trying to hold it together to keep them. She ends up passing out, and now they're surrounded by these little squid things. Issue 40. Now we're back to them trying to figure out what to do and how to get away from this thing, and Robot's like, hey, hold them off. And this guy from Mars is wrapped around them so he can protect them as long as he can. Robot ends up getting the object that he's trying to create to stop these things. He's getting it done because he figured out that the host, which is the astronaut, if they can get it off of him, then they'll all be paralyzed because they won't have a host. So then Invincible runs up, and this cool double page spread shows him with the object. It's almost like a vibration, and it's just like tossing them off of him. So they grab the astronaut and run and try to get out of there. While this is going on, this guy's got the gun in the back of his head on Earth, and he gets shot in the back of the head. This one goes right through, but somehow he's still alive, and he's fighting his way. And then this guy shows up randomly a little too late. And they're like, oh, is everyone's okay? And he's like telling them what's going on. And this guy, who's actually from Mars, is in trouble because these guys are like, hey, we're gonna need to take him back with us. And they're like, so what's happened to him? And he's like, he will be executed. So then they're on the ship and they're trying to get away with this guy on the ship. And then there's a ship trying to come after him, so Mark gets out and just completely rips that ship in half. Cool artwork right there. So Mark saves the day. While that's going on, Mark walks up on Amber and her friend, and he's trying to like kind of like hint at it, hey, we should do more than just be friends. And she's like, no, I have a boyfriend. So I'm gonna go back to where Immortal is, because Duplicate had been ripped apart and was dead. And then now we have Hark and Amber talking, and they're kind of having like the talk they need to been having. And Mark's kind of like coming to the reality that he can't have a girlfriend and be invincible, and it's just not working with Amber being just a regular human, and it's just not fair to her. Like, he's always gone all the time, and she's like, hey, you took everything you just said is what I was planning on saying as well. And he's like, all right. So he ended that relationship with Amber, and now he's over here talking to the one that got his head shot and arm bit off, as you can see. he's like, hey, I have broke up with a lot of girls, and Mark's just having a hard time trying to process not, like, he really loved her, but he couldn't hang on to her kind of idea. And then now we're back to the astronaut that they saved, and he's back home, but we thought that there was no more of those creatures, but inside of his mouth they start coming out, and they're like, it's only a matter of time. So they're not gone, and now they're on Earth, which is even worse. So Mark's on this outpost mission for these astronauts, and the one astronaut's like, hey, that's that guy, his dad killed thousands of people, and we should just take him out and be done with it, because he might do the same thing. And this girl's like, hey, that guy saved my life, so don't do anything to him. And so Seal has to bring Mark back to Earth to fight this big creature until the Guardians of the Globe show up. And then when they show up, then he's able to go back to helping the astronauts. And then him and Seal are talking again, and he's having them talk about his dad's stuff to the news, and they're all asking questions like, how do we know that you're not gonna end up just like him and start just going crazy? And he's like, look, I'm not like my dad, I'm planning on doing the right thing and helping out. And so he's doing that. So he's back home after that, and he's trying to get his schoolwork caught up on. And he's saying how I've just worked with my girlfriend, and this schoolwork trying to get it done, it's just too hard. And William's like, hey, you did okay on TV? He's like, yeah, but that's kind of like me on TV, the superhero. Me as just regular, he is having a hard time with school. So he's like, I'm gonna head out to take my mind off everything. So he ends up fighting a creature, and then he comes back home because his suit's all torn up, and he sees his mom. And then his brother is wanting to hang out because he isn't ever home for him either. So that's where Mark's starting to have a hard time trying to be a brother also. So he's playing baseball, and then his brother starts to fly, and he's like, whoa, you got powers way earlier than I ever did. So we're going to issue 43, and now his mom finds out that his brother's got powers, and he's just floating around, and they're talking about how it's not safe. He's a lot younger than you were. And then we go back to the Pentagon. Adam Eve is talking, and this guy that was in the hospital, he's like, hey, you should give Mark a chance. He seems like he really likes you. And then we go back to Immortal, and it's still talking. And then now we're going back to outer space, where Alan, the guy that's like the police of outer space in a way, he shows up, and then they send Immortal out there to talk to him, and they're about to have like a full-on fight. And Mark's like, hey, Alan, and he's like, hey, so he's like, hey, you both need to like stop. And Alan's like, I could have taken him out. So then Alan and Mark go to talk, and Mark has to catch Alan up on what's all happened. So he starts talking about the books he's been reading, and how they are supposed to give the knowledge about how to beat his dad and all that in the Ultramites. So Alan's like, hey, can I scan him? So he's like, yeah, that's okay. So Mark scans him, and then Alan heads out. And we're back to talking to William again, and him and Mark are kind of butting heads. And then randomly Adam Eve shows up, and she's like, so are we dating or what? Then we go to issue 44, awesome cover art. And issue 44 is Adam, Eve, and Mark talking about, are they dating, are they not dating? And then Mark starts telling her about, well, the one in the future came to talk to me and told me how much you like me and all this. And then once she finds that out, I think she was planning on becoming his girlfriend, but now she's like, all right, I gotta head out to think about all this. So then we go back to home life with Mark's little brother, and she's like, he's aging so fast and he's learning past what he should know. And then Mark's talking to his teacher because he finally shows up to school, and he's like, hey, just because you show up once does not mean that you're not failing in my class. So then Mark's like caught in the middle because now he's finally going back to school, but now he doesn't know if it's even worth it. So then he goes to meet up with his mom, and his mom wants to talk about something, and his mom's like, hey, I have been seeing somebody else, and Mark's like, that's awesome. And then his mom's like, well, I wasn't sure if you'd be okay with it. And then randomly Ultramite shows up, threatens Mark's mom's life, and then Mark's like, all right, so let's go talk. And she's like, hey, I'm sorry for putting your mom in danger. I wasn't planning on doing it. I was wanting to talk to you. And she's trying to catch up on, since Mark's now the head Ultramite of Earth, how he's been doing. Is he's planning on taking over like they want him to do? But he's like, hey, help me fight off this creature. So they go and fight off this creature, and then they start talking again. And she can tell how strong he is, but then just knocks him out because he's not planning on doing what she wants him to do. So they go to issue 45, and they're having a fight off, and he's like, I think you cracked my back. It feels much better now from knocking him all the way on the ground. So they start talking, and then she's like, all right, it could be 5 months, it could be 5 years, but at some point I'm gonna come back and we're gonna put a Ultramite in charge here, and it isn't gonna be you because you're not doing your job. So then she heads out, and he's like, all right, so what's gonna happen now? So then she goes back to the Ultramite ship, and then Mark goes back to talk to his mom, and he flies her home. Then Alan's out in space because he has all this stuff on his mind right now, and then he's like, oh, I think that's a Ultramite ship. And then he's like, oh shoot, they noticed me. So then him and this girl that just left Earth are talking, and they're having like a fight because he's not wanting to go with him, and she's like, I'm gonna take you. And then he remembers what Mark said, that his dad was in a prison with the Ultramites. So then he has a plan that he's gonna let her take him back to her ship so that he can find out where Mark's dad is and find out their weaknesses and all that stuff. So then Mark's upset still because he's trying to do schoolwork, but he's not doing so good in school, and he's having a hard time trying to find his own place. And then Mark's mom's out on a date right here. And then we go to Mark's dad in prison. He's talking to this guy, and this guy's like, I feel like your mood's a little bit different here today. And he's like, how so? And then Mark's like, I think I miss my wife. And then issue 46 is Immortal out in the cabins in the middle of nowhere, and then Duplicate 1 shows up, and she's talking about how she always keeps like the one version of herself hidden from anywhere to be seen, so that way if something happens to the rest of her that she's okay. So then Mark's trying to train to become stronger because he doesn't know when the Ultramites are going to come back, so he's training and trying to get stronger. And then they're out trying to fight these two little corny history thieves guys, so they're having a fight out. And then Duplicate's brother Paul shows up, which is who this is. So they have a fight, and they're fighting these other guys, and this Paul guy shows up, and these guys are like, hey, let's get out of here. So now they're fighting off Paul's because they're upset because Duplicate's gone. But then Immortal brings Duplicate back, and then Paul's like, oh dang, you're alive still. And then they're happy. And then Mark's dad is breaking out of prison where he is, but then the head Ultramite comes in and he's like, hey, you're not going anywhere. So then issue 47 is him being captured again, and then he sees Alan, and then they see each other. Then this one kind of goes like a flashback back to Earth. So that mafia type of gang, or whatever you want to call it. So they're talking about that right now in this little place. And then Mark comes back to his apartment after all that stuff. And then he finds William trying karate moves in his outfit, which is funny. Just really random. And then here's Robot and Monster Girl. So Robot's trying to find a way to get Monster Girl from aging, and Monster Girl's getting super upset, and she's like, I hope you don't leave me. And he's like, I am not going anywhere. So they're kind of helping each other out. And then there's these guys that are trying to take money, I think, from this bank. And then Mark's little brother shows up to try to help out, even though he wasn't supposed to. And then he's like fighting with these bad guys. He's doing pretty good. And then Mark's like, you weren't supposed to come here. And he's like, so what is my superhero name? And then we go back to the Pentagon. And then this guy's got a job with the Pentagon. But now he says, I won't let you down. But he's got those robots with the American flag on the side. So is it kind of like his little side project that's supposed to be doing or not doing? And that ends volume 4. And then we go into sketches of covers and different artwork. This one's pretty cool. And how they start out and then they go to the final artwork. This is some real cool artwork to look at by the artist. Keep going. This one's cool. I guess the art side does like the very beginning to like this part to this part to this part. Really cool artwork. Different sketches. Mark with a mustache. That's funny. Monster Girl and Robot kissing. Cool sketches. And then I think this last part is different covers for volume 8 and volume 9 of the trade paperbacks that they have of these. Those are really cool artwork. And then that's it. Alright, so there it is, Invincible Ultimate Collection Volume 4. So my takeaway thoughts are, I can't wait to read Volume 5 to figure out what happens with Alan, if he gets Mark's dad off the ship, and if Mark's dad gets out of it, and then what's going to happen with Mark now that he's kind of with Atomy. I'm supposing that they'll get together. Then what's going to happen with Mark's little brother now that he's got powers? Is he going to be helping out Mark to fight off all the bad guys? And then the guy that's helping the Pentagon is he doing good things or bad things? So we'll have to read volume 4 to go find out what happens next. So I do highly recommend reading volume 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And I love this story and how it takes you, and I can't wait to see how well the TV shows carries over with the books, to see if it's close at least. So I highly recommend it. And until next time, peace.